Hey there, metalheads, my name's Dilapple, but you already knew that because you're so darn metallic. You know what? I'm tired of these games I've been playing lately. I mean, come on. What have we resorted to? Cats as our main protagonists? No. This won't do. I need something way edgier. I need something like Valfaris by Steel Mantis to cleanse my digital palette. But now you're saying, well, Dilappo, I'd like a chance to play this wicked game. Well, don't worry, just check out the description for this week's review giveaway. All you have to do is follow the link and make sure to subscribe. Alright, so let's get to this review. Yeah! This is the first time in a long time I've not wanted to start with this category, but I mean, I have to for the sake of continuity. Well, I first loaded the game up and I was really annoyed. I can't really put my finger on exactly what it was, but I know that I wasn't comfortable with the color scheme or art direction overall. But it became very quickly apparent to me that the game was much more varied than I originally thought. What begins as a mishmash of colors and textures becomes abandoned engine rooms, alien bug nests, and ancient ruins. Yeah, this game really surprised me in the location department. The levels all feel very distinct and even have enemies and hazards to match the particular level's aesthetic. The only thing that really bothers me about this game now is the protagonist. His design is, like, very weird to say the least. Like, in concept art, he looks fine, but something about the bright red armor kind of makes him look less badass and more like a Power Ranger. But I digress. The world's imagery, villains, and weaponry's appearance more than makes up for the appearance of his, like, jumpsuit. Speaking of weaponry, the game offers you quite a few types of guns and swords as you progress. Each gun fires differently and they all feel pretty darn unique at the end of the day. They all have their own appearances and effects, the same with the swords, however they appear much less flashy. The most impressive one I picked up for quite a while just kind of bled constantly. I mean, that's pretty hardcore, but still. The only thing that you don't find around every corner is, well, armor. I kept thinking that I would eventually get to change out of this freaking red jumpsuit apparatus. Oh my gosh, I get it now. But yes, the armor isn't modular, and that's a tad disappointing. Oh well. Next, the enemies. Yeah, I don't know what other companies are doing, but this game has some serious variety here. It's crazy that a game like this, like, you know, that's as large and detailed as it is, had the time not to reskin every single enemy in the game. The most I saw repeated was this enemy faction, but their appearance was pertinent to the storyline, so it was okay. Other than that, the enemies really felt fresh at every turn. This includes bosses. The bosses were pretty freaking gross at times. Like, I know they're supposed to look nasty and all, but yeah, they succeeded. You may have some questions about the art direction, and yes, I did too. The game's art, done by Andrew Gilmore, is very rough on the eyes, at least at first. I'm very sure that this was intentional, you know, as intentional as it looks. It kind of looks very reminiscent of early mocap games like Mortal Kombat and the pre-rendered looks of games like Killer Instinct. The problem is that before you get used to it, it makes the game look very low res. Once again, artistic choice and all, but I don't know that this will help market this title. Honestly, I've been playing it so long that it starts to look better and better the longer I play it. I genuinely can't explain why. Things just started to fit more and more, and at one point I held the idea that I couldn't imagine the game having any other art style. I just don't think it'd fit. That's basically a long way of saying I like it. Overall, it's very atypical, but that's, you know, part of its charm. Menu-wise, it's ugly though. The UI is kind of bland for a game with such intensity. It just seems like they could have been a bit flashier. Like, I mean, the font is weird, so ooh. The health and mana bars are both functional. They are both, you know, thematically appropriate. I should also mention that I'm pretty sure it's not mana. I mean, it might be. It's probably energy or something, but I mean, it's pretty much mana. We'll talk about that more in gameplay. Lastly, I'll discuss the gore. The game has little animations for various types of enemy death. Sometimes humanoid soldiers will be cut in half if you use your sword, or blown up depending on the gun. It's really cool to see that. What's even cooler is the various ways in which your character can die. I mean, I think I've seen almost every type. Therion, your character, is very adept at dying. The game is very creative in that respect, and it keeps the game, you know, from getting stale in its more difficult moments. So one of the biggest things, if you aren't the biggest fan of the art style, my goodness, will the gameplay make up for it? As much as I enjoy the game's visuals, I can tell you that the gameplay is freaking sick. The controls feel very tight and responsive, which is incredibly important because there are some pretty frequent platforming sections which are a pretty great surprise. I didn't expect that from this type of game. The game offers several types of gameplay. The main form will be your Mega Man Zero style sections in which you are running, gunning, and jumping. There are small sections to break up gameplay through things like mechs. I really enjoyed the variety here though. I mean, nothing ever felt like it was dragging, which is great because when things tend to get difficult, people tend to leave games. Speaking of difficulty, this game is also a fresh of breath air. Fresh of breath air? Wow. I've been playing rather simple games lately, which I mean, there's nothing wrong with, but this game really kicked my butt at points. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I miss the feeling this game gave me at points, you know? That constant feeling that I need to try one more time. And the great thing is that it's not just the bosses. The level design is pretty smart. The levels are built in such a way that nothing ever feels like a never-ending gauntlet. There are plenty of checkpoints in this title, but the best part is that those checkpoints are optional. The game places these green rune type things all over the level. You need to spend at least one to open the checkpoint. The awesome thing is that you can find multiple runes, hidden throughout the level. Each rune gives you additional health and mana as long as you have it, which means you can pass up these checkpoints and keep that bonus, but risk having to redo a huge section of the level. I personally kept using the checkpoints though, because I mean, I got pretty good at the game, but not that good. I like the concept though. I mean, who doesn't like gambling?
It's good for the soul.
Along with these runes are blood tokens. These items let you upgrade the weapons that you find as you progress, and you find new weapons frequently. Some are hidden and some appear as you go. So it behooves you to take some time to explore, even if it kills you, because it seems like the hidden ones are oftentimes gated behind some sort of trial that will either test your ability to platform or your ability to kill hordes of enemies. Sometimes it's worth it, sometimes it's not, depending on the weapon though. As I mentioned before, there are quite a few types of weapons within this game. There are guns that shoot like flamethrowers. There are some that fire straight forward in a line. There are even some that spout tendrils that drain enemy health. The last one may sound like the coolest one, but it is it's the worst one. It's the worst one by far. The game is simply the type of title where you benefit from learning patterns, how bosses move, how they attack, the usual. The game rewards you for exploring its numerous levels. As long as you can handle a decent challenge, then I think the gameplay will definitely be for you. Guys, I can't really tell you much about what happened in too much detail, partially because I don't want to spoil the plot, but primarily because I don't know what happens. The game delivers the story through little scenes between levels. It's text blocks, which I mean, ew, reading. But also our protagonist kind of acts weird. Like, I don't know if there was a translation issue or if it's just his dialect. The speech was pretty distracting. He talks like one of those robots that watched 100 hours of Metalocalypse and then generates text. He just doesn't talk naturally, even though it's through text. Yeah, so the plot. Therion is the character you take control of. He is a prince, though the game never calls him that. I guess it's not metal enough. Well, he finds that his homeworld, which was once an interstellar oasis, is, all jacked up. On top of that, it's inhabited by foreign entities. So, as per protagonism, he must defend his home and rid it of these intruders, as well as find out what happened to his father, the king, which would make him a prince. But I digress. There isn't a whole lot to this game's narrative. It is the driving force behind the game's progression, but it is very weak, at least in delivery. But I think the gameplay needed purpose, right? Like, the story doesn't need to be hyper immersive, it just needs to serve as a frame for which the game is trying to deliver. This game is fantastic. While I was initially put off by the game's visual design, I can say that this title quickly pushed my fears aside and pulled me into its levels through challenging and fair gameplay. The game's balance feels spot on, and no one set of guns feels too broken, and the game's upgrade system is very simple and doesn't make your exploring feel like a chore. While there are quite a few weapons to find and use, I honestly did find myself sticking to the first gun I had, as its spread shot upgrade proved too useful to put away. The game's audio is very nice if you're a fan of Doom-style instrumentals. I personally didn't care for it, and I just played DaBaby while I was playing the game, and I was just fine. The locations and enemies were quite varied, and it made entering new locations all the more exciting just knowing that I'd get to see new challenges in both combat and platforming. The game excels at bringing you a gory adventure without seeming like it's trying too hard to be edgy, except for its slight nudity. Yeah, there is a female chest in this game. It's attached to checkpoints, so it isn't bad or anything. It just made it hard to edit this because I had to avoid showing checkpoints. No biggie, you know. With all that said, I am giving Valfaris an A. Its gameplay is simply too good to pass up. The frequent weapons given to you offer new and enjoyable ways of tackling enemies. While the story does leave something to be desired, it is a very clear, point that I should mention that it isn't the focus at all. The gameplay takes center stage here, and it's glorious. Thanks for watching, and stay perfect.